So you're definitely in Mr. Jew's dreams. Yeah, that's good. So in that dream, it's so many things that I have to discuss about famine and what believers can do in famine and what's God's instruction in famine. And I think we're in approaching that season and we're in super inflation and everything is expensive. And I read a lot of economists, magazines, things of that nature, and where we at in the economy. I do think that a recession will happen. I don't think it'll be as big as it was before, but that's what that book speaks to. It speaks of a time for a famine, and there's been famines throughout biblical scriptures. What should we do in famine? And I call it like wealth secrets in famine. Here's what to do in famine, and here's what you can do to keep you and your family thriving. And I don't want to use the word surviving because I believe as children of God we should thrive. So here are wealth secrets in family. And let's just go back. Let's go to Genesis 26:12. And it says, then Isaac sowed in the land and reaped in the land the same year 100-fold, and the Lord blessed him. That's a very, very familiar verse amongst believers. It's really distinctive. But let's really dissect it and go back to it. And what should we as believers, and what is this telling us today in our time? Because the word is still rhema. It's still for our time as we're dealing, like I said, with this inflation, and we're dealing with this layoffs of jobs and possibly famine. So let's go into scripture and see what God will have us to see. And this is what Mr. Jew see in this famine, and this is what he's teaching Thomas and his disciples and other believers. So he says in verse 26, it indicates there is a famine in the land, but it wasn't the same famine that Abraham had in his day, his father had in his day. They're two different famines. So in verse 2, God tells Isaac, don't go to Egypt like your father Abraham did. This is very, very interesting because Isaac is human. He's seen in the natural poverty, hunger, destruction, and all the elements that famine brings, because when famine comes and recession comes, it brings a whole lot of cohorts with it. It brings stealing, it's theft, robbery, sometimes death, so not just a death of hunger and famine, but the death that comes with people willing to violate their brothers and sisters. So Isaac is looking at this with his natural eyes, and he's like, God is giving him instruction. Yeah, I know there's a famine in the land. I know you're looking all around you, and you're seeing this famine, and you're seeing people going under. Don't go to Egypt like your Abraham did, like your father did. So he's saying, no, you stay here. And that's very complex, and I kind of try to put myself in Isaac's shoes. What was Isaac thinking when he got that instruction from God? There's a famine going on. What do you mean, stay here? I'm seeing everything go under me. People are losing their livelihoods, losing their stock, losing their wealth, and you're saying stay here. So that's very interesting. And let's dig deep into this, and let's get the nuggets out of it. So the first nugget that I want you to see, and I want to see the viewers and the readers who are going to buy the works of Thomas Peters to see, is the first key point is Isaac obeyed the instruction. Obedience. Obedience is better than sacrifice in this kingdom that we're in as believers and followers of Yeshua, followers of Jesus. We must obey his instruction to get the blessing, to get the miracle, to get the provision, to get the abundance. You have to obey the instruction. So that's the first thing. That's the first nugget, the first key I want you to see. When everything's, like I said, when everything's looking around him, lack, destruction, decay, death, Isaac doesn't flee. He's commanded by God to stay. So he obeyed. That's the first secret in the wealth of famine, is to obey God's instructions.
Okay, so we got the first one. Okay, secondly, and God said in verse 3, dwell in the land and I will be with you and I will bless you. What does this speak to? It speaks to trust. So first we got to obey. Then we got to trust. You only build trust from intimacy with people, to know who they are. But if God says he's going to do something, you can trust and believe that he's going to do it. So Isaac trusts God. So he not only does he obey God, but he trusts God. So these are secrets that we can do and we can learn about famine, even in a recession that we sometimes see ourselves in on the news, when we see jobs layoff and inflation, and when that inflation comes down, it's going to go kaput, right? So, what goes up must go down. So we're looking at it, and God is the supernatural economist. He's smarter. His ways are higher than our ways. And this is what Isaac is learning, and that's what he's doing. So he's obeying, he's trusting, and then let's get into verse 3. Number 3. So the number 3 secret in wealth secrets and famine, in which Mr. Jude is teaching and Thomas is getting this knowledge. Number 3, he exercised his faith by obedience, trust. It's a combination. Number 3, sowing in faith. With all the famine around him, he sowed. He did something that was tangible with his faith. Faith is a tangible thing. If you say, I'm going to be a doctor, you make provisions to go be a doctor. You go learn the trade, the discipline, you go take the medical school, you do all those things, the attributes it takes to become a doctor. You say, I'm going to become a football player. You put the training, you put the work in. Those are faith. That's faith in action. So sowing is faith in action. That's why I say it's the wealth seekers and famine. He sowed. He didn't rely on what he trusted with his eyes. He's seeing the inflation. He's seeing scarcity. He's seeing famine. He's trusting in his livestock in that day. He didn't have money, but he's looking at his livestock and stuff of that nation. He trusted. He trusted when his eyes were telling him not to trust. He trusted. And that's what sowing does. God affirms our trust in God. So he obeyed, he trusted, and number 3, he sowed by faith. By faith. And that's why the famine was so great, and that's why he reaped 100-fold. That's why the harvest was so great. That's why the harvest was so great, and he reached 100-fold, because he sowed by faith, and that produced the wealth secret that he got. So 1, you got to obey. 2, you got to trust. 3, you got to sow by faith in God, and that's when you get the wealth secrets and family.